Welcome to the Startup Grind.
So, without further ado, Raj has been, we'll talk a little bit about his background. So, engineer, product manager, worked for big companies like Oracle and CA and those companies. Had a startup in between, right? In the, how do we call it, social commerce category, what we call it? And which didn't work out. We'll talk a little bit about that in, as we go forward. But then actually started a company called iMedia, which is focused on, it was focused on an edutainment company. Anybody know what an edutainment company is that's in here? So they were focused on that, started creating curriculum, things like that around that, which has pivoted into the company he has today, which is Seven Senses Labs. So give a big round of applause to Raj. And as we get started, if you guys didn't see when you came in the back of the room, there's a couple of signs up, like, what am I looking for and how can I help? If you guys have something that you need help with in building your company, those kind of things, take out a sticky note and put it on there. Reverse, if you have something you can help people with, right, then make a note on that and how they can get in touch with you, whether it's your Twitter handle, whatever you feel free sharing publicly, then put that up there. And we do that to help you make connections with each other. Cool? Hey, Marvin. All right. So, why'd you want to be an entrepreneur?
Well, you just know me too well. It's why did I want to be an entrepreneur? Because I just got sick of the rat race in corporate.
You mean you didn't like being on the road, like, 40 weeks out of 52?
I like travel, but not that much.
Fine. That's one way of looking at it.
But just the whole challenge. Entrepreneurship brought that element of challenge and risk and the unknown. But more so that, for myself, I wanted to find something that was meaningful. I want to make a difference. So when you have two kids that are starting to become teenagers, you start realizing, what the hell am I here for? So you want to leave a legacy. So that's why I started in education.
So we've known each other for a long time. So I hired Raj away from a competitor a long time ago. We've kind of lived through some good times and some bad times for both of us, right, from an entrepreneurial standpoint. So let's talk a little bit about how you got here. So you left the corporate world, right? I mean, we had a startup, but to put it in perspective, like the startup where we were at was a venture-backed startup that we raised $73 million for. It wasn't exactly like, oh, we were like paupers in the corner. But through three rounds of capital, it was an enterprise software company, and we raised over $70 million. Yeah. So a little bit different scenario. At the time of exit, I think there were, 200 and change employees, something like that, when NetTegrity bought the company. But after that, you started Social Dragon.
Yep.
Let's talk about why that didn't work out.
Yeah, so I would say number one ingredient was location. Location was just not right. It was we were in Orange County, California, and weather's beautiful, but just the temperament and the timing and the whole collapse of the market in 2007, 2008 just spelled for disaster. And being an entrepreneur, we still didn't want to give up. So even if it was dry, still didn't want to give up. Eventually,
right.
We read the signs, and through lots of very important people, including Abe, who's my mentor here, who's been a dear friend, and Joy and others, it's been really defining moment of where we are today. I collectively have many folks on my team here, David and Mia and others, and it's just been an important part of me is learning that it's about a team. And don't be selfish that you yourself had some ideas. It's about how the team collectively brings and executes.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So your team, you've got a pretty cool team. I mean, let's just be honest, right? So you've got people from Stanford and MIT Media Lab and Tsinghua University. I mean, how did you convince those people, who could obviously be in really well-paying jobs, to come to work for a bootstrap startup company?
So having worked with them a long time, many of them a long time, some I just met, and many I convinced just meeting them online. most actually, who I met. It was, I think, uh, understanding where they wanted to be, because everybody, I think when you reach a certain stage, you want to achieve some meaningfulness in your life. You want to do something that leaves an impact, and also is challenging. You may not be in a comfort zone, so that's something that resonated with them. At the same time, I tend to visit each person that I work with, whether remotely or met them online. I try to go visit them and their families. So really getting to know them, getting to know who they are, where they come from, what they stand for, was something that really meant a lot to me, because the chemistry needs to be right. And I've been through situations where we've had people come and just leave. Don't like the open door policy, but at the same time, learn that you have to really pick and choose who you bring on board. And talent's not just in what they do, but it also is who they are. And it means that means much more in terms of execution and delivering a beautiful experience than it is just making money.
So it's interesting. Like we talked a lot today about like integrity and the importance of integrity with people who are your co-founders. If you were giving a tip to people, like how to find the co-founders that you know are going to act with integrity, what would you say? What's your litmus test as you're going through, like when you're kind of looking for that person?
So one, we're dealing with education. Families, children, if there is lack of integrity and wrong, I guess, moral compass, that doesn't sit well with why you're developing this, for what reason you're developing this, and the result is just it's going to be a time bomb for disaster. So I think one of the folks I listened to before, Salman Khan from Khan Academy, did this because he was teaching his cousins math. And for me, I have my kids at a very long distance away from me. They're living in California, I'm living in China. So it's this distance that I wanted to use technology as a way to bridge the gap. And I felt that was a way that resonated to let others also do the same. And so it's really about the quality of why they're doing it, who they're doing it for, what it means to them, that I look for in co-founders.
So I'm going to ask the obvious question, right? So you're Indian.
Yes.
Right.
I think so. I'm still Indian, yeah.
Yeah, at least today, right? It's like born in Chicago.
Yeah.
Right? Did a semester abroad.
Yeah.
In China.
Yeah.
Like China. So an Indian guy from Chicago who moved to China, who lives in China, who's building a business in China, but now thinks maybe he wants to have an office and have a headquarters in the United States because your current company, right, there's a Delaware corporation, there's also a corporation in China, right? What's wrong with you? Like why that long trek to get there? Why China and why Tampa? So you're considering Tampa Bay.
Yep.
Why China? Why Tampa?
So I take the approach where people will think I'm insane, but I am probably insane. But I spent the last 7 years in China because I wanted to be integrated into society, into local society. I may not speak the language well, but what I want to do is understand the people well, build the relationships, have people understand who I really am and what I stand for. And I think that speaks beyond words. And you don't need words to explain what your mission in life is. And so when I went to China, I understand the restrictions, the guidelines, work with them, make the right Chinese partners, embrace them as part of your team and your family, and figure that with the restrictions I have, I can always find the right ways to manage it in a legal way. And so we've done that. We worked very closely with the Chinese government and the U.S. government. We've built some great bonds between both countries, some of which, any startup I challenge them to try to do the same. It's been a mountainous task. At the same time, with government from both sides, we built, really it's been a family relationship beyond just the status of them working for government. It's really been how they want to make an impact for themselves to society. For Tampa Bay, I think the universe just brought me here because Joy's here, Abe's here, David's here. everything collectively happened at the same time. And I think this is an opportunity where we can make Tampa Bay, we can make a statement for Tampa Bay and get it on the map, really on the map, with the likes of MIT and Stanford and Cornell and Carnegie Mellon. Make this a place where it's go-to for really focused AI, artificial intelligence, and really show that it can be done for good. And it's also a great hub for Latin America. I really believe there's a big opportunity in Latin America and South America. And with the right partners and the right channel strategy, I think we can really change the world through education with robotics.
Okay, that's a really good answer.
And I mean it.
I know. I get to be facetious with you because I've known you a long time, so I get that opportunity. But it's interesting. Like some people would say that, like in our community, there's a big push. Like everybody's like, oh, we should just move to Silicon Valley. And we've had a lot of companies. We've lost a lot of great companies to Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. Like Wikipedia was founded here. Blue Ocean was founded here. Right? Those companies packed up and moved away. Mm-hmm. And I hear it all the time. Like people are like, oh, it's so much easier in Silicon Valley. It's so much easier. So you could have easily gone to Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. I am sure that you've had some offers for money from Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. So why here versus there? Because in some ways I think it's good here, but in other ways it'll be hard. So why here versus Silicon Valley?
So
because you have relationships. We were talking the other day about VCs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have venture capitalist relationships just like I do in the Valley. So why not there?
So I also spent some time in Idea Lab, so there's a lot of relationships we do have in Silicon Valley. But you would also ask, the obvious answer would be, yes, go to Silicon Valley from Orange County where you learned there was a location was a problem.
Right.
But I learned that it's beyond, it's the chemistry of the timing, the team, and the opportunity that in this way I think defeats the purpose of the right location, because the dynamics are interesting here, because I think people in Tampa Bay are hungry, or actually Florida in general are hungry to get known. There's a big focus on education here. And the only focus you hear in Silicon Valley is what Mark Zuckerberg is doing around all school. So I challenge him to come on board as well, to build this opportunity together, not just make it exclusively for high wealth individuals. But Florida and Tampa Bay, I think they're hungry here. And I want to see how hungry they are for this opportunity. Because if they're hungry here, we'll bring the right people here, and we'll make this opportunity worth their while in the long term. And you can't take a short-term vision at this. You got to make a long-term strategy to execute on this.
Okay. So let's talk about like how far you've come, because it has taken a while to get here.
Yeah.
And when you were building out iMedia, the company that pivoted into Seven Senses,
yeah.
you had a global team,
yeah.
right? I mean, there's people like all over. You had guys in London. You had several people here in
Italy.
the States,
yeah.
right? But you had several people here in the States that were working with you. And you've kind of made a decision that along the way, what would you say are some of the mistakes, and what caused you to move from that company into pivoting into where you are today?
Number one is fear.
Oh, fear.
Yeah,
okay.
the notion of fear. So putting that in its respective place. Also, focus. So focus, we focused too broad, so focusing on K through 12. And I think in alignment of that is, just to give you an idea, there's a lot of robotics companies that are trying to compete for this market, especially from the US and France. And so from the standpoint of AI, right now it's very broad. I think the benefit, the way AI will really come to life in a meaningful time period in our lifetime is through focus. And so that is big, the biggest ingredient is getting over fear, having clear focus of what our direction is critical.
So let's talk about a little bit about, so you say fear. So
Yeah.
explain fear. Like we all have fears, but what kind of fear specifically drove you to make that change?
Fear. Sometimes, initially, sometimes maybe the fear of failure again, because I've left my kids. I've been away from my kids for a long period of time. So the second is fear that you may not have enough cash the next day to pay your team.
Yeah, that payroll thing kind of gets in the way sometimes.
Yes. And so really being honest with your team, being honest with everybody, communicating is incredibly important. And having, since I've been used to working with teams globally, and language is sometimes a barrier. So having, being honest about making mistakes. because if you're a leader and you don't say you make mistakes, you're a liar. So you got to speak the truth and say, hey, I made a mistake. Let's make it up. Let's see how we can make it better. So that's the integrity you got to have with your team.
So would you say it was a humbling experience?
Yeah, very so.
I can say that because I know you, and I've kind of seen how the changes have happened over the years, so I can say that.
Actually, one more point. Listening and learning. Critical. You know, I always was like, oh, I want to do it my way. But I think Mia has been very instrumental to having me listen and learn. So I got to say that's been a pivoting point into where we are today. So.
Well, it's interesting. Like looking at the team is really diverse. They seem to have different skill sets, very different personality types, which I love. I mean, personally, to me, I think the more diverse teams are, the better their chance of success, because they have a tendency to not allow people to take the easy way out. If everyone thinks the same way, then it's really hard to get honest feedback, right? Everybody pats each other back. Oh, good job! It's all great, right? And then you get out in the marketplace and they go like, oh, nobody likes this. Like, how'd that happen? So. This is not even the first iteration of Solbit, right? So the robot that they've created to deliver the content. Talk a little bit about the design process, because I think we have some people here who are interested in hardware. Right? Hardware is a lot different than doing software, and this is version 3?
Version 2.
It's like at this point from like the first part.
Right. 0.02, yeah.
So talk a little bit about how you got here, and then like what the plans are to expand it, kind of how you want the ecosystem to work. Because there's some things that you guys are doing while there are competitors in the market that are a little bit different.
Yep. So I think first and foremost, the impact of the product you want to make depends on who's part of the company, and really creating the fabric of what the product and the company stand for. Because you can have a company that's doing robotics like Jibo and Buddy, but I think honestly the people who are creating the company and what they stand for is the defining moment of what the product is, what the meaning of the product is. So we have an educational approach or a healthcare approach or an elderly care approach, but that's because that's what we stand for. That's where we come from. And but you know, at the same time, I don't think that we should say we're competitive. We should be saying we're cooperating with them. We want to compete together with them, because that's the bettering. That's the meaningfulness of our product and the reason why we're being. And also talking about design. So we started off with 3D printed design. So we started off with a small little mini model, and we've gone through a number of designers, to say the least. And then we started off with a full size model. And then that was about every 2 months. Then we've been doing new updated designs every month with CNC, and this is before the tooling process where you actually mold something, injection mold. So we're working to achieve design for manufacturing by end of next month, where we will have a working production model that we can get ready for manufacturing. So we've got on a right partnership team, found the right team to build a user experience, and figure out who the right team members are to make up the experience. That has been a defining moment for where we are with the product.
But I think you guys have taken a little different approach. Like you're one of the design firms working in France, right? So it's like
they are from France. They're in China.
But figuring out like how to take kind of the best of the best to pull the pieces together, which is unique.
That's a science,
right?
So that I'm lucky enough to. I think that's been my advantage, is trying to find the right people. So I got to say that has been a gift and a blessing, and I've worked hard to tune that. And once you tune that, you can then work on defining who those people are and go after and get those people. But you have to earn their trust, earn their respect, and see if it matches what they have in mind.
So the robotics piece is one part of it, which is really cool. Yeah. Talk about why Jibo doesn't, or why Jibo, that's really bad faux pas, guys, does not have any arms today.
Oh, so it doesn't have arms today because we are doing some final revisions to the design, but also more importantly is we want to integrate kind of a maker movement into a finished product that we want to offer to market. So that basically means we want to offer kids the opportunity with their parents and teachers to use 3D printing as a way to download and personalize the type of arms they want to incorporate with certain modules we'll provide as standard, and they can put it together. And so that way the kid has a real attachment to what they're building, but also they're actually experimenting and learning hands-on with, whether it's in science or technology, arts, engineering, or math, whatever it may be, they have a personal experience related to that.
So what are some of the ones we talked a little bit earlier, like what are some of the ones that you guys are thinking of today? What would some of the arms do? So like sensors and projection and those kind of things, what would that look like?
Besides bringing you a beer?
That's a good thing. The fathers will love that part of it. So
you gotta appeal to the people that are paying the bill, right? So, but seriously, maybe like in biology, where you want to measure the humidity of dirt when you're planting something, or in a case where you're using this to do a geometry problem in a gymnasium to map certain coordinates and do some basic math, or we're actually having building image recognition where you can recognize handwriting and in a math equation like plus or minus, and so you identify numbers, but you also identify handwriting, because in places like China, their handwriting might be not in a very systematic manner, or it might be just plain wrong.
Right.
So they need to be not just corrected, but understand what's the right way to do this, and and have the robot, which is much more appealing and non-threatening to them, explain to them this is the right way to do it. So that's what we're working towards. So we're training our artificial intelligence to understand what the right handwriting, what type of curves, what kind of different ways children may write their words or letters or numbers. So that's been a challenging part.
So is Solvit in essence like a young child itself, right?
Baby.
That it's progressive learning.
Yes.
Right, over time.
Yes.
So what does the ecosystem look like for that? So let's say that I buy one for my child, right, and Ken buys one for his, and 4 or 5 other people buy them. What happens then over time?
So you buy it, you turn it on, and you build a profile with it, and it learns who you are. It will recognize who you're speaking to, give you a certain specific experience. That's where we intend to go. It doesn't do that today, but our objective is to help create a community where parents and teachers and kids work together and orchestrate a vocabulary that the robots would understand. So
there'll be like a big database sitting
there'll be a big cloud environment
in the cloud.
That's right.
And so whatever the privacy settings are for my particular robot that I have, I would then be able to share the data that it learns. So if I took a picture of something or flashcards or whatever that might be,
that's right,
to build a global network. So it's going to actually be in Chinese and English initially, correct?
That's right.
So I would actually be able to add foreign language components to it and all those other things as well.
Yes, be Chinese, English, and Portuguese. Portuguese, Spanish in the works.
Brazil.
So. Yes.
I'm like, let me think about that, because one of your team members is from Brazil. Okay.
Yes. So we definitely have. I mean, Brazil is a very forward-thinking ecosystem for learning and for healthcare. So, and I think that Latin America is going to be a very important area for us.
So, as we've been talking, people have probably noticed that the expressions are changing.
They are. So these are just examples.
Right.
But what we are looking to achieve is a set of expressions that are emotionally engaging to children. So whether you're looking at the face or you're hearing the robot say something to you or the movement it does, it's all based on the result that maybe it's a game that a child played. This is the type of result you would expect. It's it's happy or it's sad or it's saying, hey, try again. So it'll give you a little sad face. Or you did it too many times wrong. It'll be crying or give it some tears. So it's really about your companion. It's not just a robot. It's a human, emotional companion to you, without being a physical human itself.
So why did you? So I know why, but why did you do that?
Why did we do that?
So why is that? I mean, so in China, for example.
Yeah. So in China, they have the one-child policy. Even though there's 140 million kids under 14 years old, which is half of the U.S. population almost. They are under the one-child policy, and now as of last month they changed the one-child policy to two-child policy. So now that's about 28 million extra kids a year right now. So you can kind of extrapolate that to see how many extra kids they'll have every year. And so the opportunity to alleviate them from their loneliness that they have, from the companionship that they lack, and they're being spoiled by their grandparents because they want to have everything. They want to provide them everything, because in China in the past they didn't have everything. So this gives them the opportunity to fill that gap. And often parents and grandparents, parents are busy, grandparents don't necessarily have the time or energy to look after the children, or the grandchildren. So this gives them a set of tools or solutions that can help, I guess, watch over them, but also help play a supportive role in the home.
So you have, initially you're focusing, a significant portion of the content that you're working on initially is STEM related. So.
Yes. STEAM related.
Well, STEAM.
Yes.
Sorry, like the arts part.
Yes. Very important.
What kind of things are you looking for? Like, you have some content that you created from the previous company.
Yeah.
You've established some partnerships. So what kind of partnerships and kind of what are you looking for in that space?
So can't disclose the partners yet because they're still in the works, mm-hmm. but we're looking at major studios and educational providers that have developed specific educational content. Things that relate to learning language, applying music or arts, any kind of arts to creative learning, storytelling. Those are the areas we're focusing on.
But you're also using things like Scratch, right? So there's some coding components to it and,
sure.
and those type of things.
So we have basic support for Arduino, so you can actually use whether it's Wolfram Alpha or Scratch or Blockly to control the movement of the robot. So you can actually learn and apply coding techniques in a block-based format, a Lego-based format that allows you to drag these objects and the robot will actually move. So kids can do storytelling as a result. So you can integrate different characters in the stories, and maybe you want to do something around climate change and talk about how you can improve climate change. You can use the robot as a way to communicate this using Scratch.
Okay, so kind of switching gears with you a little bit. Like, I know there's some people in the room who are interested in like the difference in doing business in China versus in the U.S. And like some of the partnerships. So can you talk a little bit about how you've been able to overcome some of the perceived obstacles, right? You're an American, so you understand kind of both sides of this because of the governmental control. So talk a little bit about how that's been. In your situation is a little bit unique because you're not actually Chinese. Yeah,
so we won a government grant which took over 2 years. One of the only foreign teams to have won that, and we intend to use a portion of that, or actually build our AI lab with that to be a portion of the AI lab in China. But that has been a large set of obstacles to overcome. So with our Chinese team, which has been instrumental to help do that, it wasn't me. So it was a whole Chinese team that did the grant planning, did the proposals, helped with the relationships and the translation that made that happen.
But you said you don't speak the language. We actually do speak the language, but with a different accent than Chinese people speak the language. Does that become a barrier, like from a business perspective? Like, you guys are in the JD.com incubator, right?
We are in the JD.com incubator.
JD is like the equivalent of Amazon in China.
They're one of the largest e-commerce portals in China, yes.
Right. So, but they've made an investment in you guys. They have you in the incubator today. Does that change, like when you're doing business with them? Does it make it harder to communicate just because of that aspect of it? Or are you now so entrenched in the culture that it doesn't matter?
It doesn't matter, honestly. And especially the top leadership, many of them have spent years in the U.S.
Right.
So they have Western exposure. The trick is, I think being American has helped me actually. Do you wait for lots of these people to orchestrate and then make introductions and you sell each person along the way, or do you go straight to the top? So knowing me, I don't waste my time anymore, and I just go straight to the top. And
disregard all the protocols. I just forget it. It's okay. Okay.
So sometimes you just gotta make it happen. So if they say no, you just try again and just come up with a better story, and you got to figure out how it works for everybody.
It's interesting today. I was watching as we had different meetings throughout the day, right? And you and Mia were handing out your business cards. So having done business in Asia before, it's very different when people present their cards there. It's a much more formal affair. So it's very interesting to watch. Like I watched Mia like hand her card with both hands, which is the proper way, with your name facing the person who's going to be reading it, right? And here in the U.S., we like slide a card across the table.
Yeah.
So have you adapted to those type of cultural differences there?
Yeah, now the cultural differences, you don't even really need cards, because what we do is we use WeChat, and what we do is with an audience like this big, I don't need to hand. It's too hard to hand cards to everybody. It's not offensive, but it's just too hard. And so what I would do is just put my QR code up, and everybody can just scan the QR code, and everybody has my business card now. So it makes it much more efficient.
You don't have to type it in either.
No, everything's there. So I think the most effective manner is to start as an entrepreneur is make it efficient. And so if you can make it efficient, it makes everybody's life easier.
So if you had, so I have another.
And saves paper, by the way.
Yeah, it does, which is kind of important too.
Yeah.
That whole global warming thing we were talking about earlier, right? Since it's like 80 degrees in December right now.
Yes. 7 degrees in New York. It's ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're now living in Shenzhen,
Yep.
right? Which is the same latitude line as we are here.
Yep.
So they have very similar weather to what we have here. I have a friend that lives in Guangzhou who's actually not Chinese either and has been really successful with running his business there. He's actually from the Netherlands originally, but much like you, he kind of indoctrinated himself into the culture. But you've lived in different parts of China. You lived in Beijing for a while, right? And you've kind of traveled all over, so you're pretty familiar with the country itself. If there was someone here who were looking to do business in China or open a business in China or another branch of their business, what advice would you give to them?
Don't listen to the media here. Because
even though you can't, even though Google's blocked in China,
it's all untrue. Because the biggest fear that people have from here is that they tend not to step beyond the boundaries of Hong Kong, and it's the biggest mistake they can do. And we were involved in another group of partners, and they would not go into mainland China. And because
this is when you were at iMedia, right? Because it was the Hong Kong corporation versus being a.
This is afterwards, actually, and there was a group we were partnering with, but the tendency was the group of companies they worked with, they tended to be just staying in Hong Kong. They didn't want to go to mainland China, because there was the cultural barrier they felt, the language barrier, and maybe the tendency of being cheated and copied. So it comes down to, I mean, in China, what they say is if you're copied, that means you're respected. So it's a different level of understanding. And another reason we partnered with JD is because of their influential power. I mean, if you have someone like that supporting you in education, the people who are buying our product are going to be parents, maybe educators, grandparents. They want to buy a legitimate product that has support and backing from a credible organization like JD or schools or government.
So you were kind of able to leverage some other things too that you've done, I think, to get more credibility, both here and over there. Like like talk a little bit about like the 1776 Challenge Cup, and then about what you did at TEDx, which is kind of a little different twist on what TEDx normally is.
Yeah, so it's 1776, which was a good and bad. I'll share the bad part first and the good part. So at that time, I was a nerve wreck when I speak to audiences. I could say I confidently I've gotten a lot better, thank God. So, but I came here and I froze up in front of the audience, and that was that. But in terms of in Beijing, where we competed against several hundred other companies, and they were categorized in 4 different areas: smart cities, education, healthcare, and there was one other area. And we finished number 1 in education, representing China in the U.S. So it was interesting, an American representing China in America, so in Washington D.C. of all places. So that was quite intriguing. So, but the upside was we got some good awareness around that and got to learn a bit more, build some relationships of the ecosystem. Now. So that was 1776. The others, TEDx. So recently we've been involved with a Shanghai group of companies and really sitting in schools in Shanghai. And for a period of time, 6 months, we worked with little kids, 8 years old, 9 years old, on using Scratch in the classroom with robotics. And we helped them be able to tell stories and communicate and build self-confidence with the kids. And so therefore, after 6 months, I wanted to have them exhibit themselves and their skills and what they did to a larger audience. So I brought them, 3 of them, a group of 3 to TEDx. I think a group of 4 actually. One girl was actually a leader, and then the 3 boys supported her. They worked together to deliver a message how they can improve the climate. And they built this little fictitious robot inside of Scratch, demonstrating the concept. And they presented this in front of about 200 or so people, including their parents and their administrator of school, and they were in tears. So the whole idea is, how do you get kids reignited with energy of learning and have fun at it? This is definitely one of the ways. And one of the synergies, one of the things they talk about how China is teaching kids is like if you hold a duck's head and you just keep feeding it and you just don't let it go. It's like feeding them information, but it can't digest it. It's the same thing. They're memorizing, and it's not effective learning, and they recognize it. The government really recognizes they're doing a lot of creative things to improve that. Give kids more time at home, spend more family time, use technology to improve their learning. So I give them all the credit to do that. And I think the way the government's orchestrated, like a company, they build it as a corporation, and they implement it that way. So if in the next 5 years the policy is robotics and improving education and making education more accessible to rural areas, they're going to do it. I have full faith in that, and the party's going to make it happen. I don't want to take geopolitical sides, but I can just say that my reasoning for doing this is because I want to create a balance for kids, and without geopolitical fences. I really want to, whether they're from China, India, Africa, US, doesn't matter. Kids are kids. So I will do everything to make it available and accessible to everybody.
So it's interesting, you talked about the kids coming on stage. So we had a conversation earlier today, I think it's interesting. Why do you think it is, so you told me that girls, right, are the leaders in education in China, which is very different when we're talking about this type of education than the premise in the US, because like girls pretty much give up on STEM things if you look at those statistics a little bit later on. Why do you think that's different in China than here?
I think it's all levels of society. I mean, if you look at levels of income, it's pretty balanced between females and males. Here, I think it's just the opposite.
Right.
They're given free, same opportunity. I think
is part of that because of the one-child policy? Do you think that kind of changed that in China, or do you think it's been that way for a really long time? I'm just curious.
I think it's been of recent. That's just my opinion.
Okay.
I know they had one empress. Correct me if I'm wrong. They have one empress in China, and the rest are male, right? So, Mia, is that correct? They had one female empress, and everybody was male in terms of emperors, right? So it was always a male-oriented society.
Okay.
And they always had concubines and all these kind of things. So, but as a recent, it's become, since 1949, I think it's been more of the balancing that has happened between the male and female population in China.
Okay.
And that has stemmed throughout society. And so now you've got girls that are trying to push ahead because they've been put down. Now they're trying to push ahead, and it's equal opportunity for them. If they want to work their butt off, they can work their butt off and excel. And always it ended up being that even my animators in Wuhan are all women, and they just they work aggressive. They try and try harder again, and then even the kids we had in groups, the female member of the group was always a leader of the group, and it turned out that way. So I think maybe it's psychological effect.
Okay.
Also to note, they say that there's not enough males for females over there. Yes. So there's
Atlanta.
Sorry?
Like Atlanta.
Yeah.
You guys think I'm kidding? It's a 6-to-1 ratio.
So that is actually for foreigners. I don't think it's that way. But anyways, but seriously, on a serious note, I think that's a challenge, and so women have to set themselves apart from other females. So they got to excel. So it's a competitiveness amongst females to get ahead.
Well, that's kind of cool.
I think it's cool. Yeah,
I'm like,
it's really cool.
I like that.
Because they have a different angle of looking at things. So one thing I can say is women are more organized than guys. That's just from what I've seen. I'm a little less organized than other people on my team, but they're shaping me in that way, which is good. And yeah, so that's what I think about females.
And then we talked a little bit like about education, which I thought was very interesting in China versus how it's done in the U.S. So in the U.S., right, we kind of have a very traditional mentality, like, so students kind of pick classes, they go do this, but it was interesting. Talk about like what we talked about earlier about like how teachers get students to enroll in classes, because it's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. So we were sitting in Shanghai in an auditorium with 3,000 kids, and the teachers have to sell themselves why the kids should, they should sell themselves about what the program they're offering as an elective. And the kids have a choice of what program they want to be part of. There's a set number of kids that can be part of a program. So they're offering this Scratch program, and they have about 150 seats available. But then half the auditorium of 3,000 says they want to be part of this program. So then they offer two classes of 150 each for this Scratch program. More kids want to be part of it. But it's not about, it's really an opportunity that if the kid wants to do this, they voice their opinion, they stand up and they say, hey, we want to be part of this. But it's all in respect. I mean, they stand up, they bow, they say they want to be part of this, and they sit down. So it's just taught from the very beginning of respect. And then even in another class of 8 and 9-year-olds, the folks I told you about who joined me on the TED stage, they were selected, 15 kids out of 1,500 were selected. And their parents all bought them laptops to use in their program for Scratch for that semester. So they made a personal investment into their kids. So at least in China, there's a big investment of parents investing in their children. It's not about having the biggest house or the best car. They rather live without the car, live in a smaller apartment, but put 30 to 40% of their income in how kids live. That's powerful.
It is powerful.
And so that's what resonated with me, because they care for their kids. Because their kids are defining who they're going to be in the future.
Maybe we should try to put some of that into the onus of the people in this country.
It's beyond just STEM. It's the whole meaning of raising kids and family that really I think that I want to embrace as part of this movement.
That's pretty cool. So I want to give the audience a chance to ask questions. So kind of at the end, I want to ask you, so what was the best piece of career advice you ever got, or you get a choice here, or if you had a chance to start all over again, what would you do differently?
I'd be in China a lot sooner.
Oh, okay. That's a good answer. So now you've seen Inside the Actor Studio, right? I mean, like the rapid fire at the end. So we're going to do a few questions, and I'm going to open it up to the audience for questions. So what's more important, speed, strength, or stamina?
Stamina.
Who is your tech idol?
Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh. What is your most unusual skill?
Relationship development.
Okay, like that. In one word, categorize your life as an entrepreneur.
Passion.
What item do you own that you would never sell?
What item would I own that I'd never sell?
Yeah, what item do you own that you would never sell?
My soul.
I'm not sure that's an item you own, but it's a good answer. I like that.
Integrity, right? You talked about integrity for
I did. So you've seen the Office episode where Dwight, future Dwight.
I don't watch too much TV, so.
Okay, so but you know what the Office is, right?
Yeah.
So Dwight in the Office, there's an episode where Jim tricks him and has these faxes coming back to Dwight where future Dwight is telling current Dwight, right? Like what things are going on, what's going to happen. So kind of like the Ghost of Christmas Future.
Yep.
So if Gavenraj was sending faxes to Gavenraj, like future Gavenraj was sending back to himself, what would this say? What would you warn yourself to be on the lookout for and those kind of things?
God, interesting question. I think a lot of successful people have been very good at trends. So knowing and having an understanding of or a forecast of what kind of trend would be. As you grow older, you start getting better at forecasting the trend. As you get, a little bit more failures under your belt, you're better at forecasting trends. So I think there's no voice ticket that told me that, because there will still be it will still be a voice, but it's inner voice that has to resonate with what that trend you feel is coming now, because I've had so many failures.
Okay, that's good, actually. I like that. And lastly, one last question. If you were conducting this interview, what question would you ask?
I'd ask you the same question.
You'd ask me the same question?
Yes.
What question would I ask, or
Yes.
what would I tell?
No, well,
We're caught in a loop.
exactly. So no, the last question.
Spinning beach ball of death,
No, how failure or not failure has shown you the road to where you are today.
And?
No one talks. See, the problem is no one talks about failure. Everybody talks about people's success.
Well, it's funny. We were talking about that today. So, I was talking to someone who's in the room who I'll let remain nameless. Failure in Silicon Valley. You want to talk about a big difference? It's a rite of passage. People are great about it. They love it. If you haven't failed, then you're never going to be a success. The way they look at it. Nobody cares that you took. It's very interesting. I've watched, and I can name multiple entrepreneurs who've taken 10, 20, 30 million dollars in venture investment, failed miserably, right? But a valiant failure, have gone back literally and raised another 10, 20 million right behind that, right after the failure on the other side, because the viewpoint is, well, you learned something. And so many places outside the Valley just don't look at it oh, you failed? Oh, But to me, I've screwed up a lot in my life, right? We all have. I learned way more from failure than I learned from success. There have been some mega mistakes that I have made in my life, and I remember those every time. The little voice in the back of my head goes, you meet someone who's oh, I should think about that, right? And you don't do that from success, because until you've hit that wall a couple of times, you don't know.
Yeah. Or you just got to listen to your inner voice. You got to figure out where that is.
Right.
So I think one thing entrepreneurs need to do is to figure out who is their inner voice. What is their inner voice? Because most people don't know they have one.
That's true.
It's just too quiet. You got to really pay attention to it.
Not in New York, right? We're talking about LA. So in closing, so Raj flew 30 hours.
Yeah.
So he and you flew 30 hours.
10 hours train, 30 hours.
Right. So so 40 hours total.
Yeah.
So 2 days in a day to get to New York. They were in New York for about 24 hours. Went to DC. In DC for almost a day.
Yep.
And then came here. So it's a long trek to get to
Tampa.
As a part of the process.
It's a journey.
So give him a big round of applause for showing up.
Thank you.
And then I think he can kind of show you some things with the robot in a couple minutes, but I want to open it up to the audience for questions. Jamie.
So I have kind of a simple question. You mentioned working on the design for months and coming up with different iterations. Do you use a waterfall or an agile method for your
Design thinking approach. So what we did is in the past we brought kids into different design thinking sessions where we've done everything from pasties on the wall to actually having a closed room with cameras and young college students that have been that have design backgrounds that are working with the kids and asking what app works well, what do they like in certain toys, and we're sitting in another room understanding their approach. And then that's from a design perspective for hardware and software that we've done.
Cool. So John?
I actually want to go back to the 1776 a little bit. Right now, when you were at that competition, actually, how much validation or how much market validation did you have at the time of your success in 1776 competition?
Where we are today?
No, when you went to the
time.
when you went to the Challenge Cup.
I would say, if I really thought more about that, is a lot. It probably helped us understand our next pivot as a result, even though we were always focused on how to win and win. But I think we had to pay more attention of what mistakes we did, or what my heart was telling me we needed to focus on. We didn't really have an idea. We had a couple of, I was resistant, as Abe knows, to certain changes or suggested changes, but it was more about, it was a soul searching time, and putting right in front of everybody and weighing defeat in Washington D.C. was a pivoting moment at that point. And so it really helped me assess myself and reassess the whole team as a whole. What was the right chemistry? And from there, we defined who we are, what we want to do, and why we're doing it. If we didn't have to understand why, we couldn't do this.
If I could just tag on to your comment, because I was there with Raj, and I'm like Joy knows Raj a lot longer than I, but I know him enough to have been through at least 2 of these things with him as a founding advisor. And I was there in the 7076 program, and in this audience, as you're answering this question, I'm thinking back and I'm saying, what really happened there? The outcome was this pivot. We didn't know it then because stuff was blowing up and we were arguing about all kinds of stuff and we're banging heads, and 4 or 5 people sleeping in a hotel room on floors, and it was horrible, stressful time. And Raj and I banged heads about architecture, and just all kinds of stuff happened. But that pivot was born in that failure. Yeah. They won the #1 contest in China, right? And came to the States cocky, right? Because they came in the #1 and the preparation wasn't there, and the studying wasn't there. A lot of things didn't happen, and so between that and the arguing and the wrestling in the mud, it was a disaster. But that was necessary to get to this stage.
So that in itself was successful.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really, in hindsight, the best thing that could have happened.
So success is based on, it has both sides. Failure and success is equal to success. So
This pivot would not have happened without that. It was a really good thing.
So I hope it answered your question about that. It's a very important point. Whether you do TechCrunch or you do Start Grind or any other event, it's an important validation. How you feel inside. How does it affect you? Forget what everybody thinks about you. How does it affect you? Everybody, most entrepreneurs get affected by what people say. Can't let that affect you.
You had a question, yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier that your first company, you got some big warning signs like, okay, time to shut it down. How do you tell the difference between those big signs yelling give up and just, oh, we need to adjust and pivot a little bit?
Losing your home, losing your family was not good enough. Right? So those are some of the big moments in your life that you figure out, shit, what am I doing? Right? And the other thing is, why I went to China this time is you either do it fully, you either fully dive in or you don't do it at all. There's no I want to do this, what if I do this or take a job here? You can't. You got to go full in. If you don't do it full in, just stay in your company job. Because you're not going to be fully engaged mentally. You're not going to be mentally prepared to do it. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. And a lot of times, most of the time, you get failures out of it, and people will say no. Just keep going.
Yep. Any other questions? Yeah.
So, sorry to ask you this, but any entrepreneur story is not complete unless you put the dollars and cents on it.
Yeah.
That's something which we all spend sleepless nights on.
Yeah.
So, how did you start? How long was it? When did you raise your seed? What's the burn rate? What's your revenue? If you can, whatever is allowed, you can speak about some insights into.
I'm raising a Series A right now, and we've been bootstrapping. We've got some small angels that put some money in, but we've kept the company pretty lean by doing creative financing. Creative financing meaning leveraging revenue share, leveraging certain parts of equity. You may have a convertible note that, there's certain ways you can do it. If the partners really believe in it, if the team members really believe in it, you can win that support. And if they have a real understanding, we're focused on education. So education really has a deeper meaning than if you're just a regular internet company. And if they really believe in it, they will do whatever it takes because they can see mutual success. And I'm one for that. If I'm going to be successful, everybody's going to be successful. So if I say I'm going to share what I'm going to share with if I have something, I'm going to share it with people, I will share it with people. That's our reputation. So that's how I work. It comes down to type of entrepreneur. The movies out there, I don't do justice. I mean, this movie Social Network, I don't believe Mark Zuckerberg was like that at all. And but I think he is one for sharing too. So the true entrepreneurs really share amongst the people that brought them up there together.
Taylor?
You obviously have a very distributed team that seems like it's only becoming more distributed. How do you guys create a culture across countries, and what tools do you use to kind of enhance that?
We use WeChat, which is sort of like WhatsApp and Facebook combined. Been very effective. We use QQ, which is another communication tool for sharing files. So we use a lot of Chinese-based solutions because obviously Google and Facebook are blocked out there. But I don't think Google has been very effective for us, even if it was not blocked out there by itself. We also use, I go meet the team individually on my own. Spend a lot of time with them. We spend a lot of time on the phone. Whether it's WhatsApp or WeChat, I'm always about communication. So especially we're dealing with several languages. David speaks Portuguese as a primary language. Mia speaks Chinese, Putonghua. So it's communication is a big obstacle, but it's also a great way to bring people together because it brings that means to understand people better. And like as an example, I never met David in person, but he's been introduced to me by another colleague in Brazil, and it's just been like we're brothers, So we have this level of understanding, we have this cooperation. It's family. That's what I feel a real company's about. It's about having a more deeper relationship than it is just by paying people or just satisfying a certain requirement. It's not about that. Of course, it's important.
I think part of that even goes back to like when we first met, like at Business Layers, so the company that we sold in Integrity. We had two at the time we had 150 employees. We had 27 different countries represented, and it's kind of like a UN. And one of the things we did was we sort of put a rule in place because we wanted to be respectful of everyone's culture, but there's also challenges with that. Sometimes if people speak foreign languages and they're sitting right next to you and you don't know what they're saying, and that kind of caused some challenges. So we put a rule in place that said you either must speak in English or you must speak in the native language in the country in which you are in. At that point in time, in public areas, behind closed doors, you can speak in any language you choose, right? But this way we kind of did that, and we actually created a committee, believe it or not, in an organization of that size, like 7 people, to talk about the different cultures so that we were actually sensitive to what other people did. And I think it's just making a conscious effort to be sensitive to other cultures and letting people know that they can openly talk about those issues versus feeling like, oh, I was offended and so now I can't say anything. And as Americans, we offend everyone. So, we have to really kind of take that into consideration.
But one thing important is to think about that in terms of hours a day, there is no 8 to 5. It's like I'm accessible 24/7, 7 days a week, any day, including Christmas. Doesn't matter.
You don't actually sleep, I'm pretty sure,
no, we
for
don't
the times
sleep
that we
very
talk
much.
to each other.
And the only time I sleep is on the airplane or in a taxi or something like that. So it's like if you want to be an entrepreneur, you better really feel passionate about it or just don't do it because you will figure out what's required of yourself.
It's true.
I was going to ask, as you're discussing with different capital funds, the fact that you'd like to come to Tampa, have they been supportive of that? Do you think you'll find capital support here?
It's a very, very good question. I think what I'm looking for is not just capital support. If you just ask for capital support, there's thousands of other companies asking for capital support. What I'm looking for is the right combination of partners, financial partners, university partners, channel partners, manufacturing partners, how we can create an ecosystem together. Because if I think from conversations today, I have a lot of good chemistry. Some chemistry didn't really feel right, but I think in the whole scheme of things, I felt the chemistry is there. Now to put these ingredients together, and I asked the universe to give me a certain time frame to do this, reasonable time frame, but I think that the ingredients are here. Now it's just about putting some focus in it, and not just asking for money, but asking for ways that we can bring employment to the region, we can create local manufacturing, we can help the community, we can help the school systems, and we can make families proud of their kids. So that's what we want to bring, and then we want to set the example here, and then we can set the example, then it can be adopted in other places in the U.S.
I guess my final question would be, coming back to the success metrics a little bit, how many users do you have right now?
None. We're still in development. So we have pilots with schools, but that's just basically for feedback.
So talk a little bit about that iMedia you did. So there's the other side of it. So you made a decision because you were creating a curriculum at one point, which is part of the content you have now, but you actually did have quite a few there.
We did.
And you've actually used what you built there to kind of form where you're at
so
here.
this guy came back again.
There you go.
We haven't let him in yet. So I think that with iMedia, we had some content that was not complete in kids' hands, not being paid for, but being used and tested, getting good feedback. But it was not good enough to be a company around that. It was incomplete. It was, we had competitors like Pearson, McGraw-Hill, and Houghton Mifflin that we potentially had to compete against. And it's not something that you want to be in a good, strong, you can't be in a good, strong position, especially with a lack of capital. And so we had to really focus, really look inside of us and what we wanted to do. So that's why we chose to move out of content development into where we are today.
Phil?
I was going to ask if you could tell us what price point you're trying to get it down to for a U.S. market, and if we could see it in action.
So we want to make it as affordable for kids as possible. Under $500, we'll say. That includes premium content and then other accessories. So we're looking at product bundles. Working with companies that may develop smart technologies like smartwatches, other products to make the family environment more secure. So telling me where the kids are a certain part of time, doing some doing notifications of, hey, your kids are home. Now you should do telepresence to your children. So there's a number of revenue opportunities that we can get out of this. But we're starting off with a base robot. We're going to offer some premium education content. We want to build a kids marketplace out of this, and partner with even existing hardware companies, and leverage their relationships to bring this as a companion beyond just another tablet in the home.
So like one of the things they talked about is like the base price of the robot at like $300, which is very inexpensive compared to anything else that's on the market. But the other piece that's kind of interesting is like you're talking about like doing things like through a similar situation like Shapeways, so the kids can actually create their 3D designs and things that they're using with the robot, and then the kids can actually become entrepreneurs and put them on the marketplace, which is kind of cool.
And we'll do a revenue share with them. Yeah. So we'll show you some movement, but.
Do you have your phone?
I do. So right now what we have is we have a couple things. We have integration with on our tablet we have back there. We've done some image processing with our image libraries. Within a couple weeks, we're going to be launching our neural network, and that's going to be in the cloud, and that's going to allow for both image recognition as well as David's working hard on speech recognition. I'm here to spend a couple weeks with him to further work on that. I think that's what's really required. I got to spend time with him. And but from a movement standpoint, we developed a simple motion app, and what I wanted to orchestrate and show was the ability to have smooth movement that didn't make this robot feel like a machine. it really has to act and move in a way that kids feel comfortable with, and that's been a big challenge. I think most companies, you got to think about speed of movement, how fast the robot moves by the wheels. That's why often many companies they only focus on having no mobility. They want to have just a base and then have basic animation such as Jibo and others. They do it in their own right based on their own mission. For us, it's mobility. So if you have grandparents in the home, you can control it and see it where they are as a first alert mechanism. But you also want to have the ability to talk to your kids and be able to navigate with them. So let me see if I can get this working.
Yeah, we actually gave him a seatbelt in the car on the way here.
Okay. So the head movement needs to be very smooth. And so what we're doing is we're orchestrating the movement of the head with the actions that the kid might be playing on their game. So it has to be smooth. And then we'll put it on the ground in a minute or so and show you the movement. But ideally, the movement has to be very smooth. And also, we want to give it basic movement like a pet. So it can be like a pet for the child. So you may want to think, I want to, put somebody wants to develop an accessory. They put a outfit on the robot. So now it can be like a pet, like a dog or a cat or something. So we can define different motions and different movements. If you have two of these, you can say, oh, you're doing well. It can be sad, it can be angry. So these things need to be orchestrated in workflows. And so we're using Unity as a way to develop these workflows. So based on what kind of content developer you are, you can define different movements based on a reaction you expect the child to give, to receive based on the action that's given.
Meaning it can be platform independent.
Yes, exactly. So that's what our intention is. And we chose Android because there's so many Android developers, nothing against Apple. Yeah, that's that. I can show you some basic movement on the ground. It's kind of hard here because they've got, we'll put it over here.
Oh, you're still hooked up.
Oh, okay. So we'll show some movement after the talk.
Well, you can take your mic off if you want, so it's fine.
Okay, that's okay. So I'll show it in a bit, but essentially we have basic movement. The arms will, as Joyce said, we will allow children to 3D print it, but we have modular arm standards that we use. We can have non-moving arms, or we can have electrical motors in the arms that can actually build grabbers. So you can, the possibilities are endless. So we just want to provide a platform that kids can use in a simple and easy manner that makes it an enjoyable experience for kids.
Cool. Any other questions? Yeah.
So you're opening your company here, and you're hiring a workforce?
We're planning to, actually.
Okay.
We're considering that, looking at the options. I don't want to make any spoilers here.
Thank you. So what kind of a workforce are you, if you were to establish yourself here, what kind of a workforce are you looking to develop in the local area?
So we want to tackle both the skilled and unskilled workers, especially those that are underserved. So helping them develop skills, whether it's actual helping in the manufacturing process, or it's in a design process, or actually development process. So we would, for Unity, for example, it's a application that's you can use on any computer, and there's a lot of tutorials out there. So we would probably work with the local university to do some basic workshops, maybe a Unity class, teach them the basic skills, and then have them self-learn, and then give them certain scenarios. And as with those scenarios, we will work with content providers to provide the content and orchestrate those scenarios, and then publish those. And that would be, they would see their work in action, and potentially get internships or other, maybe employment as a result of that. That's how I see this self-fulfilling cycle work as a result of working out of here.
Jamie?
There was a headline this morning that I saw, and I didn't read the whole thing, but basically by 2020, one out of every 10 homes will have a robot doing something meaningful in it. Where do you see your technology fitting in
I
to
see
that?
multiple robots in the home. I mean, I'd like one in every home if possible. So it's for us. It's going to be critical to work with the right partners, and they say in China they say there'll be 5 robots actually in every home, whether it's for the home network, smart home, or it's in for your connected car, or it's for your personal social robot for the home, or it's someone bringing you a beer. These are all, or it's even a robot that's cleaning your floor. These are all robots. The key is, how do you get them to work together? Having a way they can talk to each other that's meaningful in your home. That's going to be very important. And that we're trying to solve that from the educational angle. And for education, then streamline that to other areas that are meaningful, like healthcare or elderly care. And that way, I think that we can exponentially grow the robot consumption in the home, but in a meaningful way.
Okay. Anybody else? And Raj is going to stay around so we can talk after. Anybody else? Okay. Awesome. Thank you all
Thanks
so
for your
much
time.
for coming.